Welcome to this segment of Rare Book Cafe Coffee Break. You may recall that on our last meeting, our co-host Ed Markiewicz, formerly of Montgomery Rare Books, or
No, still with Montgomery Rare Books, just redefining the business plan.
Just redefining his business plan, shared with us some details of his trips, his recent trips in Europe, particularly in Spain and Portugal. And he's got, I think, a few more things to tell us. What else can you tell us about your trips?
Well, obviously, all of us book lovers, whenever we travel, we're always popping into bookstores wherever we go. And after I finished hiking the Camino de Santiago, I moseyed on over to Portugal. I wanted to visit Porto and Lisbon. And in the city of Porto, or Oporto, is what's claimed to be the most beautiful bookstore in the world. And the name of the bookstore is Livraria Lello. And we might have a picture of it here if it pops up. It's right on in a square. There we go, a square in Portugal. And you can see from this photo, there's a line building out front. If you visit this bookstore, be prepared to tuck in your elbows because it is a little bit crowded. It gained a lot of fame when there were different stories circulating about the role of the bookstore in the Harry Potter series. But it costs $5 to go into the bookstore, which you do get $5 credit back if you buy anything in the store. And anybody ever chooses to visit, buy your ticket online. That always helps to get you a place, and you'll be able to go in and not have to stand outside in the weather and wait for your turn. Inside the bookstore, the very first thing that you'll notice is the floating staircase and the bejeweled ceiling. It's absolutely exquisite, with a stained glass window letting the light in from the top, radiating all of the shelves. Now, it's not a very big bookstore, and most of the books, all of the books are new books. And many of the books are their own imprint. They have their own publishing company that does reprints. As you might be able to see on the shelves, many of the books are front-facing, so there's not a huge inventory because it's all about looking good and providing a curated list of books for the public.
But now, one thing I read said that most of them were in Spanish. Which I guess kind of limits what a lot of tourists are going to buy.
Yeah, that's true. I would say it's probably 50% Spanish, 40% Portuguese, and 10% English. Mm. And there were sections on the Harry Potter books, and there was one little tiny room on the Prince and republications of the Prince.
Did you?
I'm sorry, the Little Prince.
Did you buy anything?
I bought my grandson a Little Prince coloring book and a set of colored pencils.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, that was nice.
Have you tried the new Chat GPT yet? The new AI?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure I could do it, for one thing.
Well, it's really easy, but I yesterday, in preparation for our talk today, I downloaded Chat GPT and I typed in, what are the most beautiful bookstores in the world? And this one came in number 2 behind a bookstore in Argentina.
Whoa, well, did you have pictures to compare so you could see if it was
No, I didn't. I didn't get quite that far, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'll go back and check out the online pictures of the one in Argentina.
Yeah. Well, I imagine, there's another one of the staircase.
There's another one of the floating staircase. Looks kind of similar to the library in Harry Potter.
Well, it does. Oh, that is so gorgeous. That is so gorgeous. But I don't guess there's much opportunity in that bookstore to curl up with a book somewhere. And
No, there isn't. There certainly aren't any chairs to sit in or sofas to be comfortable. Lee, what's your opinion? What makes a good bookstore?
Well, when we talked about doing this, I kind of made a list, and I think that it needs to feel homey. Now, I'm thinking of used bookstores more because that's what I tend to gravitate to,
Hmm.
at least these days. And that there
Well,
need
I
to,
made my own list too. I got 5 of the things that I think need to be in a bookstore list. So let's compare them and see what we think.
okay. I think it needs to have a homey atmosphere. I think that there need to be places to sit down and look at books. Because I think sometimes you're more likely to buy if you've had a chance to do more than just stand in front of the book, and look at it real quickly. I like a bookstore that leads you around shelves and gives you things to discover instead of just straight lines, if that makes much sense. But
Hmm.
I also think that you need a staff that knows what they have.
Absolutely essential. A
Uh,
good, well-educated staff is so important to a bookstore.
right. And
That's on
frequently
my list.
with independent bookstores, that's going to be the owner, rather than, but maybe well-trained staff too.
Yeah.
And I think that,
Well, before you go forward, let me go back to
Okay.
your first one. It needs to be homey. Do you think a bookstore? I mean, do you think a bookstore needs a couch and a chair and a settee to settle in?
I do.
And
If
isn't
I
that
had,
the antithesis of retail, though? I mean,
no,
most,
well, it probably is, but I'm not thinking about mass new books. I'm not thinking about Barnes and Noble. I'm not thinking, though in the children's section there are places to sit, but I'm really thinking more about a fairly carefully curated collection in a used bookstore
Mhm.
more than I am about mass market sales. Yeah, I think there need to be some places to sit down. I also think that that's helpful if a couple comes in and only one of them is looking for books. Then
Yeah,
there
you
is a
got the
place.
grumpy husband who wants
Yeah,
to sit on a
yeah.
chair while his wife peruses the stacks.
Right. I think that's helpful. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little kids section where you've got a table and chairs and children's books and toys that can be touched and played with that aren't necessarily for sale.
Well, speaking of homey, do you think a bookstore should sell coffee or provide a cup of
Um,
coffee
I I like
or other?
I like the idea of coffee or wine or food. There was at one time a bookstore in Asheville that had a restaurant in it, and
It's Asheville, North Carolina.
yes, that had a restaurant in it, and you could sit around in sofas around coffee tables and have charcuterie trays and
Hmm.
drinks, but then the books were in separate rooms,
Okay.
and you didn't carry your food back to the rooms. And I think you've got to be careful. Probably really valuable books may be under glass anyway, but I don't think you want your patrons dribbling coffee and jelly donuts on everything.
Yeah,
So I think
for
you have to
sure.
be careful. But it tends, you want things that make an independent bookstore a destination. Though sometimes the best ones are ones you just happen upon.
Yeah.
So,
And there needs to be a bit of quirkiness, as you said. It's
Yeah.
something that leads you around the store, but all of a sudden you come upon a hidden cubby or something that might
Right.
have been a bathroom or a closet once upon a time.
Right.
That's got its own genre in that little
right,
section.
yeah. And I think things like local art,
That's good.
I think a cat
A
is a
cat.
welcome part of a bookstore.
At least one cat.
At
huh?
least one, yeah.
Well, I know on Instagram there's a special page called Bookstore Cats.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had my cat. I had Tony.
Yeah.
Tony. Everybody loved Tony when they came into the bookstore.
Well, I have a cat. I don't have a open bookshop, as you know, but I
Right.
do have a book room, and it is open by appointment. And Callie, my cat, tends to accompany people up there. They'll have a little gate across the top of the stairs leading to it to keep her out, unless I really want her up there. But I have sofas and chairs and tables. I don't have any food up there. But the kitchen is at the bottom of the stairs, so
Well,
that's always a possibility.
It's your home, so it's
But
already
I'm at home.
Yeah.
I'm at home. Yeah. I like. I think those are the main things. Old houses tend to lend themselves
That's where I
well
was. My bookstore was in a house built in
to,
1917 up on the second creaky steps of floor,
yeah,
and it's very mythic.
yeah. And sometimes bookstores surprise you, or you're not expecting to find a bookstore. So if this is a good time, I'll tell you about the one we happened upon. I retired from directing a church preschool in 2013, and that fall we took a trip out west to hit a lot of national parks. We went to Rocky Mountains, we went to Yellowstone, we went to Grand Tetons, we went to Mount Rushmore, made a big circle, flew into Denver,
Sure.
made a big circle back to Denver over about a 2.5 week period. And we spent one night in Rollin, Wyoming. Rollin is a very small town.
Everything in Wyoming is
It's
small,
small,
except for
and
Wyoming.
except for Wyoming. And the next day, our plan was to get to Jackson Hole by way of Wind River Reservation to see Sacagawea's purported gravesite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some
So
people say that she lived to be 100 years
100.
old.
Yeah. One of the segments that my son is working on for the TV company he works for is going to include some stuff about that. But anyway, to get from Rollin to Jackson Hole by Wind River, is really, out in the middle of nowhere. And we were on this deserted road, a state highway, saw a sign that said, "Old books and fresh eggs for sale." We didn't see where the building it referred to, but there was a rest area there, which, when you're traveling in places like that, you take advantage of everyone you come to. And there was a lady in there who was cleaning, and we asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, well, that's at my house. I'll take you over there." And these two women, whose names are Polly Hines and Linda German, had moved from Denver, where they owned a bookstore called Mad Dog and the Pilgrim, and for years. And they also had a cleaning service. But when they decided to move to Wyoming, they moved 70,000 volumes.
Oh my God.
70,000. And they now have a little ranch out there in the middle of nowhere with sheep and goats and pigs and chickens.
And books.
And books. And the books are in a 2-story barn. They have some old toys sitting around. They have some, I think, if I remember correctly, they had some Wyoming related newer books, but most everything are used. It was mostly used books.
Well, we'll see if we can get them on the show, maybe.
And that's right. And they, I didn't think about them until this morning, but they do have an active Facebook page, so I think getting in touch with them will not be difficult. And one of the ladies did, they would shear their own sheep and dye the wool, and she would do art pieces of tufted wool that looked like paintings that were just gorgeous. But it was just such an unexpected pleasure to find 70,000 books in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It was, it was not a trip we were looking for books particularly, but you don't ever pass up a bookstore. So it's, I don't know that I ever have a chance to go back there, but I really did love it. It was just a great
We have a
experience.
bookstore here in Portland called the Backstory Book and Yarn. And they're about 2/3, their income is about 2/3 books and 1/3 yarn.
Well, there used to be one in Chattanooga that the owner knitted, and when you walked in the store, she was very grumpy. When you walked in the store, you were greeted with bins full of her hats and scarves and stuff. You had to get by before you could ever get to the books. But I don't think that bookstore is there anymore. And another favorite of mine was the Captain's Bookshelf, also in Asheville, North Carolina. But it has since closed, and Chan Gordon passed away last year. But the last time Chan was having a big sale, before he went completely online, when he was getting ready to close the brick and mortar store. And we went up there, and he was going through a shipment that had just come in, and suddenly he said, "No more sets of Dickens." We have too many sets of Dickens. But it was a great bookstore.
I've got one more criteria about what makes a good bookstore. But before I get there, let's remind everybody watching today, send us a little note on Facebook, YouTube, or however you're checking in. Tell us what's your favorite bookstore and why, and maybe we'll try and get them on the line, or maybe we'll profile them in the future. So what's your favorite bookstore, and why is it a favorite?
That's a good idea.
Another criteria of a bookstore is I think they need to be involved in the community, whether it's readings, poetry slams, or just being a responsible member of the community, participating in street fairs, especially, which is really easy when you've got a couple of carts of $1 books.
Right.
We all have got, carts and carts and boxes and boxes of $1 books. Put them out there on the front steps and let everybody participate in the joy of reading.
Right. And be active if there's local literacy programs, donate books to those. And even a big store. There used to be an independent big store in Atlanta called Oxford Books. Mm-hmm. And the main store was new books, but they also had an annex with used books. And they were in an area called Peachtree Battle and were very active in that community, and was a great loss. But you could see it happening when the first Barnes & Noble opened up about a mile from them, and people were flocking to the new Barnes & Noble, and you could just kind of see things going down.
Yeah.
But for a long time there, Oxford Books was a real mainstay of books in Atlanta. Greatly missed.
Well, I'd say every 2 or 3 months, the New York Times has an article about bookstores.
Yeah.
And there really does seem to be a bit of a resurgence going on. You've got to be creative. You've got to be fast on your feet. I mean, there's not a lot of margin in used books, except maybe collectible or antiquarian books. So you've got to put in a little bit of elbow grease. You
have. And some bookstores that have mostly new books have used book departments. Like Oxford did, like Square Books in Oxford, Mississippi does. There's a chain called The Little Professor that, for a chain bookstore, is very nicely done. They're not large. They're not huge bookstores. The staff are knowledgeable. Things are arranged so you can find things. They have a little cafe. Mm-hmm. There's one in Birmingham that when I go to visit my brother that I tend to go to. And for a chain, it's a nice bookstore. It's a nice bookstore. They don't offer memberships and stuff like that, and it's books. That's what it is. It's books.
That's why it's called a bookstore.
Exactly. Yeah. And even though I don't have an open shop, my book club meets here a good bit, and sometimes we meet up in the book room, and sometimes we don't.
Another great way for a bookstore to participate in the community
is with book clubs. Is with book clubs, and we don't have in Calhoun an open bookstore. We don't, and we've had them in the past, and they have not survived, and we've never tried to do that. I've always thought, there'd be so much fun, but I know from talking to other bookstore owners how time-consuming, and I do better with what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Lee, I think I just took my last sip of coffee.
Did you? And I think we have gone over 15 minutes.
Okay.
But that's okay.
All right, folks, tell us what your favorite bookstore is, and we'll see if we can profile them on the show sometime in the future. Look forward to hearing from you.
And be sure to, so that you'll know when we're going to be online, be sure to subscribe either on Facebook or YouTube. And don't forget that we are sponsored by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair and Biblio. So support them as well.
I love Biblio.
And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, Lee.
See you later.